You're welcome back, and if you're just tuning in, it's Inside Today on Global Television. I am Jumai Manson, and like I said, I am being joined by Mr. Lugard Okonigbo, and of course, he is a development expert. And at this point, we're just going to play a short film that has to do with the protest that is making rounds that happened on Tuesday in Mina, and of course, proceeding all the way to Niger State. And of course, following the outbreak of the protests in parts of the country over the rising cost of living, we know that the federal government has set machinery in motion to tackle food shortages in the country. And of course, the Special Presidential Committee met at the Presidential Villa on Tuesday to articulate actions necessary to stem the tide, including the release of available food in stock. Now, the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, said government is concerned about the protests, particularly the one that occurred, like I said, in Mina and, of course, Niger State, and it wants to ensure that there is relief for citizens. Individuals should not be afraid about the high cost of living. He's assuring that all is going to be fine. But, you know, some of these will involve unlocking foods that are available in most of the storage facilities, like the national food reserves around the country. As we all know that the Federal Ministry of Agriculture has some food reserves that will be made available to Nigerians if by any means there is food shortage in the country. Now, the government, as we speak, is talking to major millers and major commodity traders to also see what is available in their stores to open it up so that the government will provide some intervention as they discuss with them, and also provide some intervention, like I said, to make this food available to Nigerians. Now, you know, at this juncture, like I said, the government noticing that actually there is still food in the country. Some people are taking advantage of the situation, especially because of the high cost of living and the depreciation in the value of our currency. That's the naira that has led to the cost of these food items also going up in the marketplace now. For someone who goes to the market at this time, we realize that it's not the same amount they bought a particular food item 2 days ago, 3 days ago, and make it far worse last week. You cannot compare. So all we know at the moment is that discussions are ongoing, and very soon we're hopeful a solution is in sight for Nigerians as a nation. And like I said, I am being joined by Mr. Lugard Okonigbo, and he is a development expert. Good afternoon, Mr. Lugard.
Good afternoon.
How are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank God.
Now, looking at this protest, the whole outcome from Mina, people protesting about the high cost of living. Of course, it's understanding when you see that you cannot afford the same price of, you cannot afford rice, you cannot afford the things that you have bought in the marketplace. Now, I want to ask, do you think should the ruling party blame opposition parties for the cost of living protests across the country? Should we?
Well, from my own experience, I've come to see that most of the times we have this blame game principle that goes around. So when you have a political party in power different from other political parties, they try most of the times to politicize whatever that is happening. And the same thing may have happened during the time of the NSAS, that they said, oh, they were being instigated by another political party. We have come to a point in this country where whoever that is occupying any political elected officer or appointee should take responsibility. I've always believed that where people fail to take responsibility, there is bound to be a high degree of irresponsibility. We have the political elites who are not responsible. I say it with all sense of humility. And they are not committed to promoting the ideas of a democratic society. When something goes wrong, you blame another political party. But when there is success, you ascribe all the reason for the success to yourself. That is very wrong. That there was protest, so many factors are involved. I'm not saying that sometimes it may not be instigated by political party, But we should look at the greater picture of what happens in our society. That when you, as a chief executive, either as a president or as a local government chairman or as a DG, if you are not living up to the responsibility, people are bound to protest. And I will even say it here, that the protest is even long overdue. If you look at the cost of foodstuff in the market today, it's getting high. 2 days or some days ago, my friend told me, said, husband and wife no longer quarrel. Whenever the wife comes from market and say, that thing I buy last week for 2,000 naira, it's now sold for 2,005. He said the women are feeding fat on the men because they've capped on the opportunity that things are growing high. And we laugh jokingly over it. It sounds like a joke, but that's the truth. Because these days, you go to, even within your environment, you just go and price a pack of Indomie. Today, they tell you 220. The next day you come, it's 250. After 2 days, you come again, it's 230. I'm sure you saw the video that went viral concerning the dollar rate, where that man was making call. Hello, how much? Say 750. Oga, not sell again. The Oga was still wasting time. And before you know, he jack it up. Right there and there, the thing rose to 980 naira. It looks joke, it looks funny, but that's the true scenario of where we are today. That the cost of foodstuffs are getting higher. Those in position today should do what they need to do. They should do the needful, rather than sitting down to blame the politicians for the protest. The question you ask, are the prices of food getting high in the market? If yes, why? What are the causes? What are we supposed to do? What are we not doing right? So there are basic questions that those in government should ask themselves before throwing blame. But you know, the politicians are always in the business of blame game. So I'm not surprised that it's coming from that angle.
But when we ask, do you think this is like a subtle way of undermining the Tinubu administration? Just a subtle way of saying, okay, this administration, they are not competent. Things are going out of hand. Do you think it's just a subtle way with this protest, it's just a subtle way?
Man, not at all. The figures are there. It's right clear. When you increase the cost of fuel, what happens? As we speak, we have people who are farmed, and it's costing them so high to bring out their farm produce. You look at the cost of transportation. So that's the protest is not just to say, oh, the administration is not working. It's clear. I have persons today who have moved their children from the school they used to attend to another school that is close within the environment, even though before they classify it that it's not too, standard for them. Why? This someone receiving less than 300,000 a month, she has 3 kids, and just to take one of them on transportation per term or per month was going for around 60,000. And she has a question, where will she see 180,000 just for transport? I beg, we could come back to close to the house. And today they just have a walkway to the school just to save. That is someone going to school. The more of, when you talk of farm produce, 1, they have weight. 2, the roads infrastructure is not there. 3, you have the bottlenecks on the road, different tax collections, all these add up. You have the issue of insecurity. You have power failure that will affect the preservation of such products. And then you see the high cost of prices of foods. I said it last year that when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came in May, it was at the peak of the farming season. Nigerians will not really understand the implication of the fuel price, the removal of this fuel subsidy. Now we are beginning to see, and I can tell you by next month, upper month, the prices of food are going to grow very, very high. Why? Because President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came in when farmers have already farmed April, May, and June. They were waiting for harvest. And you know, we have poor preservation mechanism. Processing is still very low. So most people that farm April, May, June, they harvest and they were selling July, August, September. Those that have spillovers still sold October, November, December. And by December, the Xmas period, you could see definitely things will always go high, as usual in Nigeria. All those have accumulated into the dry season farming. As you see right now, I have farms. I work with a lot of women farmers, so I can tell you the demography of what happens. From here to Gwagwalada, you could see left and right, people are farming watermelon. But as we speak right now, no more, because there's no water. On the whole stretch between the airport and Giri, you look at the left-hand side where you have University of Abuja, all those expanse of land, they farm watermelon. But here we are in this dry season, there's no water. So you could see the high cost of watermelon. So the same thing is applicable to every other plant. So those in government should seek expert advice. The expert will tell them the truth, not the politicians. Because most of the chief executive in office, they wait for, they call who they term as stakeholders. Please tell me what thing they happen. No, they should look for those who are really in the field.
Who are farmers.
Who are farmers, to tell them the actual situation, the actual thing that is happening. If not, they will never get it right.
And now, I want to look at, talking about the protest. Now, how strategic is the protest being in catching the government's attention? We know it's all about the high cost of living, but there are so many things surrounding it when it comes to unemployment, when it comes to no light, no water, fuel subsidy, all of this. But how catchy is this protest in grabbing the government's attention?
You see, I've worked in office where I've seen that those who are troublemakers are given attention. Our government system recognize those who are troublemakers. I say it with all sincerity. I've worked in an office where it was time to take care of people's transportation. And after writing the list, the Oga at the top will say, okay, these first people, priority. Make sure you pay them first. I don't want trouble.
Because they're troublemakers?
Because they are troublemakers. So our government recognize and respect troublemakers. And that is not good. You see, it creates room for you to feel that, oh, I've certified the troublemaker so I can do whatever I want to do. And we should not forget that whenever there is protest, people cash on it. So you just wait for the least, the most possible way to capture it. Because that's why you see, in that protest, I can tell you, opposition party will lead, will even pay and sponsor some of their people to go and make the protest sticker so that they get some political gain and cash on it that the government is not living up to expectation. Then you have those who are unemployed. They are not doing anything. They want to use the opportunity to loot and destroy things. So then you also have those who feels that, oh, they are really frustrated about the government of the day, and so they want to use the opportunity to blackwash the government. So whenever there is protest, you see that the action you see is a reaction from different components. And that is why I would say, yeah, that government should live up to expectation. So that we don't start thinking, oh, the government is not living, the government is not doing, the government may be trying. But my own advice for the government is to get expert advice from those who are the real farmers, the core farmers, who will tell them the true situation on ground.
Of things.
So that they begin. And you see, when the farmers tell them this is the situation, the farmers invariably is telling them the solution. Because when you know your problem, invariably, you have already known the solution. That's the truth.
Now let's look at cashing on things. You mentioned, individuals, you even said political parties can actually cash on this particular issue when it comes to protest. Now, in your own opinion, do you agree that with the school of thought that is blaming Niger State government for inciting the protests?
I would totally not, I wouldn't agree with you that the government will instigate protest against itself. I will not agree to that. No government wants to see such a protest. And I can tell you, His Excellency Umar Bago, that I know very well, we don't want to instigate a protest that would dent his image.
But you know, it started from Mina, and now it has moved all the way to Niger State. So that's
the truth. It must start from somewhere, and it must move. And that is why the government must live up to expectation. Let's not also forget, as I said, politicians can cap on it. Then another thing that I also believe that will also work is that if there is poor mechanism of communication, you see, people can cash on such loopholes to attack the government. And so, if you are aware very soon, not think like 2 months ago or last month, I overheard saying, I don't know whether you know his title now, the farmer governor. That's his title. And so, I will not be surprised if the politicians who want to cap on that to say, you that call yourself a farmer, people are hungry or food.
People are hungry, yes.
And so they want to cap on that. So I'm talking from political sides now. But the fact remains strictly that the government cannot instigate that, though government sometimes can do certain things that you may not really believe.
So you are, but for you to say this now, yes, it shows that, of course, you know, government is very political when it comes to areas where it's very beneficial to itself. They're very political. Would you agree with me in that aspect?
Well, one thing I know is this, that you see, sometimes, I will say this here, you know, sometimes most of these organs at the top, the governors, they only react when there is trouble. I once had a very close military friend some years back, about 20 years ago. And when he would just tell me, say, look at, you see some of these organs, these governors, they know the year word. When we want to collect money from them, we just arrange boys, throw away like 50 rounds of bullet. And you see him, the governor will be afraid. He's a military man, he has retired. I said, why do you do that? He said, when we do that, he go to fear. What's happening? He said, whenever the man hears the sound of bullet, and they will always arrange it in a manner close to wherever he is at that particular time. And he feels threatened, and he will call them and said, what are you doing? And they will tell him, those boys don't come again. You see the gun they use there. We don't have the type in the armory. You have to do something. He said instantly, he will approve the money, release the money, without even writing. And that's why I said that government, most of the times, the language they listen is protest, and it's unfortunate. We are not supposed to allow protest. We should allow people to be pushed to the wall before you do the right thing. But it's just unfortunate that we are in a situation where people in government do whatever they want to do.
And this is where we have found ourselves.
Yes, of course.
And let's move on now. How would you describe the reaction of security agents in the cause of this protest? How have you looked at them, understood their body language? How have they acted when it comes to...
Well, I've not really studied to know what the roles that the security agency played. But one thing is very sure, whenever you have protests, you are advised not to use arms. No lives must be lost. You try to control it in an orderly manner by maybe using tear gas. You can use water canisters and all that. That way, you can actually be able to curtail. And while that is ongoing, you also have good intelligence to find out those behind the scene. Because within that protest, there are those that were paid to do the protest, and there are those who were not even paid. So in such scenario, you try your best possible to do all you need to do within the security architecture that governs such protests. So for me, like I said, I have not really watched to really understand the mode that the security agencies applied. But from my own findings so far, to the best of my knowledge, I could see, first of all, the governor took responsibility immediately by holding a press conference. I'm aware the government had a press conference.
Yes.
He had meeting with the security agencies. He took decisive step to curtail the inflows of trailers and trucks, millets, picking and all that, so that they control and so that they can have some price control. But I want to say here, those may be short measures. What we should look at is, how do we have sustainable agriculture? that is broad-based, so that we don't have dry season and wet season. You know, when we say, most times when we say we are doing dry season farming, what we are really doing, to what extent is it? To what extent? I was in Adamawa last December, where I traveled almost like 1 hour journey, and it was completely bare dry land. And I was asking myself, can we have a government that will just bring in solid irrigation system into this large expanse of farmland? And you see that people will still be occupied. I tell you, in the next 3 months, go to those places, you see people are farming. That means these persons that have this farmland, they can actually farm. But the reason why they are not there, they've all come back to the city. So you keep seeing rural-urban migration. And when the farming season comes, you see most of all these Okada boys and Merwa, they will all run back to their various communities to go and farm. That shouldn't be the case. And
But they're actually doing this because of fear. You know what is happening in various parts when it comes to terrorism. Most people cannot just, farm. As I can recall, I've met some farmers. I know farmers who will say that has been their source of livelihood. But with this issue of terrorism, invaders coming into their farmlands, they cannot stay as long as they used to. So they have to find an alternative measure. So when they farm, they go out, like coming to the rural parts, urban areas, urban parts, to make money, then go back when it is time. They cannot stay there because of the issues of kidnapping and, of course, what we see in the country. So can you actually blame them? You cannot.
You can't actually blame them. But again, I can say that has also contributed to the high cost of food. Because the farming capacity has also dropped.
A lot.
Not just farmers facing insecurity. We have high cases of rape. Women that are raped, killed. Some are even kidnapped for little ransom. So all this, and you see, once there's a kidnap case, what happens? Thousands will not go back.
Thousands.
They won't go back to their farmland again.
And just to add to that, Mr. Lugard, there was a time when some bandits went into some farmlands and killed these 21 farmers in the northern part. And to make matters worse, they were actually harvesting their produce. They were killed and they burnt all of those produce that they labored for. So you can imagine that is part of the issues in which we have when it comes to farmers and production of foods, but I'm sure we'll get to that because I will be speaking with a farmer, a qualified farmer who understands her bit. So you're just with me on this part. Now, you mentioned that, of course, the Federal Minister of Agriculture said that we have some food reserves in 6 geopolitical zones, right? And then if push comes to shove, we have food that will be made available to Nigerians. Now, looking at that, how sustainable do you think the government plan is to open up the reserve of the 6 geopolitical zones? How sustainable will that be?
That's not sustainable. You see, the money bags will still control whatever. We have people who can buy off whatever the government is bringing out from the food reserve. They are there. You see, we're in a society where money decides the order of the day. We have those who have the money and what they just want to wait is, okay, fine. Somebody just come with a proposal and say, Mommy, you know what? I have a big warehouse and I have so quantity of tons of maize coming out from so location. Please, if you have your money, you buy now, you store. In 3 months' time, you sell at this price. And what the person needs to do is just to carry the calculator and check. After all, where I'm going to store it is just a warehouse. It's not going to consume light. It doesn't need water. It doesn't need additional infrastructure. All you need to do is to put a fortified security man to guide the place. After 3 months, what you bought for maybe 45,000 naira per bag of rice, as at that time, you are going to sell for 60,000. And the person just look, okay, I'm going to make 10,000 naira. 10,000 divide, that's almost like 30% return or 40% return on investment. He looks for one of his property and use as collateral to get money from one of his friends who is a manager in one of the commercial banks. All these things I'm telling you can be done within hours. and you think that when such a person carries it and store, what happens? My advice is this: government should focus on regulation. Government should focus on monitoring, evaluation, rewards, and recognitions.
What happened to storage facilities? Because we do not have a good storage, like you mentioned.
What I think, in my view, storage facility should be is that government should encourage private investors. Government should encourage private investors who brings in storage facilities at a cost-reductive measures. That way, if, for instance, for every 20 kilometers, there's a storage facility that can take care of maize and all these locations. Yes, of course. So you identify that area and provide such storage facilities. You have storage facilities in your political zone. What's the carrying capacity of those storage facilities? To what volume can they actually meet? These are questions. So it's not sustainable in any way. You open everything up, it still will not be enough. Because wherever you have, okay, how do you even regulate and monitor what happens? Immediately it leaves. Yes, you can have photographs and video to show. But once it leaves, between the marketplace and the storage facility, what happens in between? The truck that carries it, are you going to, do you have a tracking system for the truck? So government also should begin to bring technology into driving agriculture. So that if you say you are going to load 10,000 trucks, do you have a tracking system to know where they get to at every point in time? Or the stops they need. Or where they stop. Or, okay, such a truck went to social location. What next? We have a storage facility at Kwali. A vehicle that leaves Kwali on Gwagwalada Road can be going to two different directions. It may be going to Kaduna, Kano. It may be going to Nasarawa, passing through University of Abuja. So how do you track? So when you have a tracking system, you'll be able to know the movement pattern of a particular truck. So, but I tell you, that is not sustainable anywhere.
Now, I want to ask you one question before I allow you, so I can allow Ambassador Florence Edward come in. Now, looking at this, can we say the positive response of the government, was it good or bad? Because it took a protest for the government to react to the release of food stock up in the reserve. Is it a good or bad reaction? Let me say it again. Can we say the positive response of government is good, or is it bad because it took a protest for them to react or release food stock from the National Food Reserve?
Yeah, I listened attentively to pick the wordings that you were using. First of all, you said the positive response. I will not totally agree with you that it's a positive response.
But it is.
It is a response. It is a response to a reaction.
But it's something that is, for instance, it's something that we want to hear, that there is a solution to all of this. They are going to open up the reserve of the 6 political zones. At least they have in mind to make things better. And, like we mentioned, speaking to millers and also farmers to know what they have in stock. So at least that's a positive response. They're not sitting back and folding their arms and saying, okay, the high cost of living should continue. But they are making an effort. So it's positive in a way.
Well, if you say positive, here we are. But to what extent? You see, my own understanding of positive is that I will justify the response to be positive if I see the entire value chain. The response is that open up your food reserve. When you track and you monitor and you see that it gets, because once it leaves the food reserve storage facility and one money back somewhere, one person can buy the whole food stuff in the reserve. That's the truth. And if such person buys and divert it, the suffering still continues. And that is the